What's up, everybody? Joe here. Have you ever been just a little frustrated that you're stuck at some kind of level in your wholesaling business, whether it's houses or land, and you're like, man, I'm doing all the right stuff. I'm sending the marketing, I'm doing them, talking to sellers, I'm making offers, but you just can't get past the one or two deals a month. Maybe you're capped at, 10, 20 grand a month, which is awesome. I mean, it used to when you were first getting started, like, man, if I could just make 5 grand. Well, you're doing that, but you're stuck and you just can't break past this like invisible barrier. Well, in this podcast, we're going to be interviewing a friend of mine, Mike Hambright from Investor Fuel, and we're going to be talking about how to install operating systems into your business that can literally triple. And I can say that very confidently because I've seen this in my own business. I've seen Mike do this in his. You can literally triple your leads, your revenue, your profits by just implementing real simple systems. And we're going to be talking about that on this podcast. So I'm glad you're here. Listen, if you're watching this right now on YouTube, do me a huge, huge favor. Comment down below. If you've got, just say hi. Tell me where you're from. If you've got any questions, type them down below. I like to see what you're thinking and see what you're feeling about this type of content and topics and stuff like that. Say hi. Tell us where you're from. Give us a thumbs up too if you like this video. Okay, one more thing too. I want to let you know that as I'm recording this right now, I am going to be doing a challenge next week. And even if you're watching this later, you can still go here to get some information about it, maybe see the replays of it. But we're going to be going out and making 100 offers. And I'm going to be doing this with you. I'm not just teaching this and showing you what to do and how to do it. I'm going to be making 100 offers next week. This is a 5-day challenge. It's completely free. And yeah, this is one way to triple your business. Just start making more offers. So go to joemccall.com/offers right now. Starting next week, even if you're watching this later, this is going to change your life. This is going, because like if you're not making offers, you're not making money. And I say this all the time, your speed to income in this business is directly proportional to the number of offers that you make. And I'm sure we'll talk about that with Mike today. But this is what it's all about. And some of you are like, okay, Joe, yeah, I don't want to triple my business. I just want to do my first deal. Well, this is how you do it. Go to joemccall.com/offers. It's completely free. And you're going to join me on this crazy challenge of making 100 offers in 1 week. You don't have to talk to sellers. We're not going to be spending a ton of money on PPC or cold calling or a bunch of direct mail. We're just keeping it really, really simple. Anybody can do this. And it's going to be a lot of fun. I hope to see you there. Are we ready to bring Mike on? Mike Hambright. How you doing, Mike? Oh, you're muted. Hold on. There you go.
Good to see you, Joe. Always good to see you, buddy.
Good to see you too. Mike from Investor Fuel. We go way back. I remember watching you on the podcast Flip Nerd.
Yeah.
And do you still do that podcast?
So it's evolved, just like, it's evolved, right? To where we had several different podcasts for a while. We were doing REI Classroom and some different things. You and I are very similar in the sense that we're like casting a lot of lines in the water over the years, right? So, but we primarily focus on the Investor Fuel podcast these days. So a few years back, I kind of put my efforts into interviewing members of my mastermind under the Investor Fuel podcast. And even that's gotten a little bit inconsistent. But yeah, I mean, this, when I started the Flip Nerd podcast, you and I met probably shortly thereafter that. And that was, I think it's like 12 years ago. I have to go back and do the math. We're getting old.
I started my podcast in 2011. You started yours shortly after
2012. That. Yeah. Because I remember, and I've said this many times, like when I start, there's hundreds of real estate podcasts now, maybe thousands. I don't know. But when I started it, I don't know that I don't know that I knew you. Maybe I knew of you, but I didn't know you. Because back then there weren't tools like this. There really wasn't. So, I mean, we're going to like date ourselves here, right? But there wasn't really that active of social media at all. And so podcasting was kind of new, but there were only 6 podcasts prior to me starting mine. And you were one of them, and Sean Terry and Matt Terrio.
5, 6, 7 of them.
Yeah. Jason Hartman, I think even back then had like 15 podcasts or something. But anyway, there weren't that many. And it's kind of grown from there. But yeah.
Do you remember when you started your podcast, were you worried that you kind of missed the wave, it was too late?
I've thought that over time, like, is this still kind of meaningful? But the way that I've always done my podcast is like, I know there's benefit from doing it, from having content out there. Obviously we're doing that right now, but I guess kind of early on, I said, look, I'm going to just hang out with this guest and get to know them better. And like, I'm going to network in public basically. And so whatever happens, happens. But my goal is really just to spend time with Joe today and get to know him better, you know?
Yeah.
And so I think
I remember in 2011 thinking, man, did I miss the podcasting boat? You know, I thought podcasts were kind of dead and I was too late to it. But anyway, glad you're here, Mike. I want to talk about tripling people's businesses. Tell us real quickly about your story. You had a huge business and you kind of shuttered it down. So, and then you grew it back up again. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. Well, so I started, basically I'm referring to myself as a corporate refugee. So, did a bunch of stuff, down the corporate path and, kind of got fired from a dream job and then went to another company that was a startup that was flying high. And then 18 months after I was there, they filed for bankruptcy. And it was just this kind of realization of like, I need to take my destiny, my financial future into my own hands. And at the time, my wife had left her job to have my son, who just turned 17. But at the time that I left my last corporate job, he was 2 months old. And shortly thereafter, got into real estate investing. So at the time, I went from like two people that had good kind of corporate jobs, making good money, no real responsibilities, to a wife that quit her job, a baby, and then I lost my job and we had no income. So I was like, what are we going to do here? And I'd always been interested in real estate investing and just had never done anything about it. I mean, been to some boot camps and RIA clubs locally in Dallas, some of the Dallas market and things like that. But it always had an excuse. I didn't have time or I didn't have money. But I always had an excuse, right? And then there came a point, it was like, look, I got to do something. We have to make this work. And for me, that was summer of 2008 when I got started in real estate investing. And we kind of went big from day one. I mean, I guess part of it was, you know, I've said in the past, kind of tongue in cheek, that because my wife and I met in grad school, we went to a top 20 MBA program. When I was in corporate America, they sent me to some Ivy League schools, some fancy education. I was like, I don't need any of that. And you don't. However, I think that it allowed me to think bigger from the beginning. Is like just being around bigger organizations probably helped us from the beginning, because from day one, we got an office, we had an admin. We kind of got heavy on marketing pretty quickly to generate.
Well, you started, you joined a franchise, didn't you, at the time?
Yeah.
Was that right out of the gate? You started a franchise?
It was after trying to figure it out for a few months, and we just like we didn't know, right? We like contacting realtors and looking at houses on the MLS. We were primarily looking at stuff to keep as rentals, but in hindsight, like we needed today money, not, you know, as you know, rentals, no matter what anybody thinks, I mean, they don't cash flow that well. Even if you say you want to have $200 or $300 a month in cash flow, I mean, I can tell you this: I have a lot of net worth on paper for my rentals. But like I've done two make readies in the past month that I don't even remember. One of them was like 40 grand, like a turnover from a rental. Right. And so it's like $200 a month that eats your cash flow for like the next 10 years. But fortunately, truthfully on that rental, we've had the same tenants for like 10 years. And so it just turns that after 10 years, it needs a major rehab.
Well, you can't, I used to say all the time, you can't eat equities.
That's right.
Right. That's kind of dumb, but Wheaties, equities.
Yeah, it's true. Like, and the truth is we have a lot of net worth in our rental. Most of my rentals we bought from 2009. Most of them, I have about 40 rentals in Dallas, and 2009 to 2012 or 13. And so, I mean, I bought them with a mentor, pretty good guy that has thousands of rentals actually, that basically said, don't ever count on appreciation. It's all about cash flow. And the reality is, I'm here to tell you 15, 16 years later that they've never cash flowed that well, but the appreciation has been insane. And so, but we've never, you know, I know this isn't what you asked me, but we've never refinanced them. We've got a lot of equity in that. Like in hindsight, should I have refinanced them at 3.5%? Like maybe, but it's nice having, you know, 8 figures in net worth from rentals. And of course, again, it's all on paper right now, but that's the part of the retirement plan. I guess.
We have a mutual friend who's one of his favorite sayings is "refi till you die." Yeah, and I can't stand that. I think that is a big mistake. But I would never argue with him about that, because he would beat me down in that argument and win it every time, because you can't argue against the spreadsheet. The numbers don't make sense, but it's okay. That's not what we're talking about.
Yeah.
You got into a franchise back then, and I'm sure you probably learned a lot of what you're doing now today from the systems and the processes that you were forced to kind of join into at that time. Did that franchise, did it help you, influence you at all with that kind of process and systems?
Well, we could have a whole conversation on that, but yeah, I would say that I thought I was buying into a business in a box, but the box was fairly empty. I mean, so I would say no. I mean, I think our corporate backgrounds and having a wife that's super detail oriented, very much what we would kind of call an implementer or an integrator, is kind of what forced us to realize that we needed to have people, processes, and systems in place.
So it's really your wife who's behind all this.
Yeah, she. I've told this joke a few times before. She used to refer, and my wife, Lindsay, she used to refer to herself as the woman behind the curtain, and then started to change it to the puppet master. And I was like, wait a minute, what does that make me? But no, I think, she's largely out of the business, so she's still involved. In fact, she's here in the office today. But, I think just her influence on me of like, at some point, when you work with your spouse and you're not the detail oriented one and they are, it's like, you're gonna keep bumping heads unless you figure out how to like not throw all my crap over to the fence for her to solve my problems. And so I've just gotten better at it over the years because I had to if I wanted to stay married.
Good for you. Wow, good for you.
Yeah.
All right. So you grew a large business. You got out of that franchise. You kept on growing, and you've done a lot of different things since then. But talk about what are these processes that you put into place that you in your own business? And let's take somebody. Let's say we're talking right now, Mike, to somebody who's maybe does one or two deals a month, but they want to scale and they're getting frustrated that it seems like it's too hard, or they're just hitting their head against a brick wall.
Yeah.
What is systems? How can that help them? Does that make sense?
Well, yeah, I think there's a few things here. I'll start with this. Very few people, like a lot of people that get into real estate, as you know, Joe, we were the same thing. We wanted freedom of some level. Usually early on, we thought it was financial freedom, which I think once you hit that level and you're like, I'm doing, well enough to never have to go back to work in corporate America again. And, we probably both have said some variation of, they're never taking me back, I'm unemployable, or maybe even they can't afford me or whatever, right? Like, you're never going back. But I think, you get to a point where you realize what you really want is time freedom. You want to control your life, right? And I think that there's a lot of folks that are in this business that are doing better than they were when they worked for somebody else, like when they had a W-2 job, but they're very much stuck in a situation where they have a job. Like, they might work for themselves, but it's a job to where if you wanted to take a vacation, the business is going to suffer. God forbid you have someone in your family that gets sick, your business is going to suffer. And so I think that that's this kind of chasm of like people that are self-employed in this business, and their business card might say they're the CEO, or they might refer to themselves as the owner, but they're also the operator, right? And I think that's where a lot of real estate investors get stuck, is they have a good business, they're still hustling. And as our buddy Tom Kroll likes to say, hustle should be a season, not a lifestyle, right? And I think a lot of people are stuck in that hustle where if they don't go work hard today, they're not going to make money today. And so then you realize it's like, okay, I need people, processes, and systems to get me to that next level. And then of course you have the whole thing of like, well, is it the chicken and egg? Like, do I make enough money and then go hire somebody? Or if I don't go hire people to help with this, can I even get to where my goals are? And so, and it's a tough thing, right? You got to be willing to invest in your business. And I'm guilty of, for many years, saying once I get to a point and I can afford to hire somebody for that role, then I'll do it. But the reality is you probably never will get there unless you find somebody to do it. Because when you're self-employed, the problem is none of us are good at everything. And as a small business, you're kind of, if you stay small, you're forced to get good at everything, but you can fool yourself all you want. You're not as good as you think you are at multitasking. And there's a bunch of stuff you're doing in the business that you're just not good at. And the reason you're doing it is you're too cheap to hire somebody else to do it. right?
Yeah.
I mean,
What
whether
that's
you're
that
one
saying.
person or 15 people, you have an org chart that says you have a sales and marketing department, you have a finance and accounting department, you have a business operations department, you have HR. You still have all those. It's just that your name is on every one of those seats on the org chart.
Yeah. The CEO stands for Chief Everything Officer.
Yeah.
And it's true. Like what got you here won't get you there. And
Yeah.
there's different theirs. Everybody has a different there. Right. For me, I remember being scared to death to hire a virtual assistant to do my marketing. Right. I read the 4-Hour Work Week. I said, all right, I'm going to try it, but I didn't want to hire somebody from another country. I hired somebody from Indiana, and that was amazing. All of a sudden,
That's kind of another country.
yeah, there are a bunch of Hoosiers there.
I'm the Texan. Everything outside of Texas is international for me. So,
I will say this real quick off the script here. If we ever had a civil war in the United States, I am driving nonstop one way to Texas, and I'm moving to Texas.
Yeah.
And I'm going to live there. Okay. Anyway.
Yeah.
And I hope we don't. God, I hope we don't ever.
Well, you and I are buddies, but we bought a bunch of land and we just kind of built a ranch in East Texas. Right. So yeah.
And I know where you live.
That's right.
Oh, okay. But anyway, I remember, I was scared to death to hire a virtual assistant, and I did, and it changed everything for me. And then fast forward about, I don't know, maybe 8 years. Fast forward 6 years. My business was really growing, but I was hitting that ceiling. And then somebody told me, you need to hire a local based executive assistant and US based. Like what? And that freaked me out because that was going to be 3 or 4 times more expense than a virtual assistant in the Philippines. And by this time I had 3 or 4 virtual assistants from the Philippines. This friend of mine said, do this. And so I did. And you know what? My business, my productivity, my revenue tripled after hiring a US-based assistant. And she just forced me or helped me systemize what I was doing, take what I wasn't good at and did it herself or found somebody else to do it, but she managed that stuff. And I was able to focus on what I'm good at. So how does this start? I know everybody's in a different place, but like, where do you start with this kind of stuff if you want to build a skill?
I think, and the other thing that probably happened for you is that person in our businesses, there tend to be a lot of administrative burden type tasks, right? A lot of paperwork. I mean, even though there's been this like tech boom, like there's still stuff that's really paper heavy or in our business, closing docs, signing closing docs, all those things. And, that person, if they can free up your time to be a notary and notarize stuff for you, so you don't have to go somewhere to get it notarized, and you don't have to like go chase people as much. You're like, I'm gonna have somebody else go chase them. You essentially you've bought back your time. Like the goal is, as you build a more profitable business, and again, it's a chicken and egg situation. Like what comes first, the profit or the people? It has to be the people. You have to be willing to invest in that. But you're basically saying, like, let's say that you're used to making $100,000 a year, and you're like, in order for me to get to 200,000, I really need to make 400,000 and spend another 200,000 hiring people to do my job. So we're making more money, but I'm using part of my I just refer to your profits are like dry powder, right? Like I'm going to use that to go buy back my time and have people do the stuff that I shouldn't be doing and I'm not very good at, or maybe you're good at it but you hate it, or maybe you're terrible at it and you also hate it.
Well, this reminds me too of why when I did this, it forced me to get out of the way.
Yeah.
Because now I got this lady who's working for, and she's still working for me today. Her name is Dana. She's awesome. She was in St. Louis at the time. Now she lives in Florida. But I remember like, oh my gosh, what am I going to have her do? But it forced me to really and it was very crude. It was elementary, but I thought, all right, so for example, in a deal, these are all the things I have to do. And I don't have to do this and this and this and this and this. Shortly after this, I overheard a friend of mine in an office space next to where I was. He said, let's make a list of everything we have to do and then ask ourselves a real simple question. How do we do none of this? And that was his process of creating systems. List everything you have to do and say, how can I do none of this? How can I get somebody else to do this all for me? Yeah. And so for me, I started asking those bigger and better questions, which helped a lot with this whole process. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's got to be, I think our buddy Russell Brunson's kind of talked about the big domino. Like I have all these issues to do. And like And I just actually saw that you've probably seen this video or a variant of it before the other day, where this guy had like 100-pound domino. It was basically just like a big piece of cement,
Oh yeah.
and they had a bunch of other dominoes, and they're all smaller. And then the smallest one, he literally used tweezers and kind of put this domino down, and it knocked over a little bit bigger one and a little bit bigger one, and there were like 10 of them. And it's like this little domino that I had to use tweezers. By the fact that I put this structure in place and I knocked that down, it knocked down all my other problems, essentially, right?
Yeah.
And so it's the same thing. It's like, who can I hire? And we're kind of dropping names and books and stuff here. Is the book Who Not How? It's like, who do I hire that's going to go figure this all out? And it's not that you're going to be able to just walk away. You got to put some, you have to help them kind of get ramped up. But a lot of times we are one person away from transformation in our business, and we just have to find out who that person is. As the owner,
what
you
really,
figure that out.
What really helped me too at the same time was thinking, because I was overwhelmed, thinking I had to create all these processes myself, and I had to write everything down, do all this training and all that. But when I figured out, you know what, I could hire somebody to create the processes and systems for me.
Right.
And I can hire somebody that can manage the people that are doing it for me. That was game changer for me.
Yeah.
And I didn't have to figure it out. I said, listen, this is what I'm trying to do. This is kind of how I do it. I want you to document this and create the processes, and whatever you can't do or don't want to do, hire somebody else to do it for you. And so the way we kind of do it is we have virtual assistants now that do the manual data entry work. And I have my main executive assistants. I have two of them that manage the team, and it's so much better that way.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's one of the realizations that I've had is I have a couple of large organizations now. One of them we've got 70 employees in, but I'm not a great manager. So I got to find like a strong number two. And I think some of us as entrepreneurs are that way because we're just like, we just are willing to jump in and do whatever it takes. We'll like run into the fire. Right. And so, but what you realize is, what I've realized that certainly over the years is like, nobody cares about my business as much as I do. And so if I'm, there's kind of thinking of this, there used to be this Saturday Night Live skit back in the day of like this IT guy, and they're like, how do I do this? And he would kind of come up, he's like, move. And he's like, he'd just sit down and like, do it, and, he was like, never show anybody how to do it. It's like, I'll just do it. And I think some of us as entrepreneurs are guilty of that because that's how we did it early on. It's like, I figure everything out. But you realize like, I've kind of given this analogy before. Like if I bought a McDonald's franchise, probably nobody would get those fries as golden brown as me, but I'm the owner. Like I can't be frying fries. So I've got to find somebody else that can do it almost as good or good enough,
So would you say again, we're talking to the solo entrepreneur right now who's doing 1 or 2 deals a month on their own.
Yeah.
Does it start with hiring an executive assistant full-time, do you think?
So I think it's one of two roles, and it depends on your skill set. So if you're really good at acquisitions and like sales, then it's probably an executive assistant or admin to handle a lot of the administrative stuff. If you're not good at that and you're kind of more detail oriented, if that's your profile, then you should probably handle some of the administrative stuff, make sure the leads are coming in or whatever, and have somebody to handle sales for you. So it's not as clear as like an introvert and an extrovert, but if you're more on the introvert side and you just like hate talking to people, then you got to find somebody else to talk to the people,
That's really good. Yeah. For me, I was more not wanting to talk to sellers and be that front, but I was good at the marketing and generating the leads and all that. So I partnered with local wholesalers. I found wholesalers that were already doing deals. They just wanted to be in their truck, driving around town, looking at deals, talking to sellers, belly button to belly button. They wanted to be out in the field looking at the properties. They had the money. They had the buyers. They knew how to negotiate. They were way better than I was. And so I said, listen, and I knew these guys. I had trusted them. They had integrity. And I knew they were doing a lot of deals. And I said, why don't I do the marketing? I'll pre-screen the leads with my team of VAs and stuff and give you the leads. You work them. We'll manage them all in one CRM where we can all see everything.
Yeah.
And we'll split the profits.
Yeah.
And like these guys were like, that's amazing. Because they didn't want to be behind the computer. They didn't want to be updating, all of their Post-it notes and stuff like that and keeping track of their stuff. So when I said, all right, let's do this, and I showed them how to, like, we use Voxer to voice message the notes from your conversations with the seller. And I told them, listen, just Voxer your notes to my VAs. We'll update the CRM. We'll send the offers. We'll do the follow-up. You just be when we send you a lead, you call them. I've done hundreds of deals like that, right?
That's another way to build your team, right? Is a JV or a collaboration too, which I know you and I both are big on collaboration. So it's another way to skin the cat of like, what am I not good at and who else could do it for me? And so it could be an employee, or it could be in some instances a JV, or even a partnership,
Yeah. Okay. So I want to talk about your Investor Fuel OS, your fuel operating system. This is really good. And I want to give you a plug right now for your Investor Fuel Live that's coming up October 7th, 8th, and 9th in Dallas, right?
Yeah, technically it's in Grapevine, which is kind of right where if you're not from the area, you don't know, but DFW Airport is actually in Grapevine for the most part. So it's just a few miles outside of DFW Airport. But,
and I'm going to be speaking. I just found out I have a 6-hour presentation time slot.
We're bringing you out of retirement. You asked to speak more, and I was like, well, Joe, I've got an event coming up here. So Investor Fuel Live, I think this is our 7th year of doing this. And for me, I have my Investor Fuel Mastermind, which we have, lots of members of around the country, but the Investor Fuel Live is a way for us to showcase some of my mastermind members. It's mostly people that are in my mastermind that are speaking and sharing their knowledge. And it's not a pitch fest. It's not hypey. It's operators that are sharing their best knowledge. And so every once in a while I bring in a few outside speakers too. So you're coming, Joe. Pace is going to be there. We got Rafael Cortez, a few other people that we know. Tom Kroll's coming. Yeah. So we've got some great folks that are coming to share knowledge. And I think the tickets are like 80% off still right now. I think that's about to end actually. But it's just a great event. And honestly, tons of people that have come before have said like, this literally is the best event I've ever been to, because it's not a lot of fluff. It's just like Joe's going to get up for a period of time. Pace is going to get up, and they're just going to like share. I'm going to go deep on a thing that's going to move the needle for you. And we typically have 18 to 20 different speakers that are just getting up and sharing their best advice. And then we, network throughout as well. So it's a great event, and it's coming up soon. We're excited to have you there.
Yeah. And I don't have anything to sell. I have a few ideas of what I'm going to be talking about. I love going to these kinds of masterminds. And I've said this for many, many years. You guys, if you're not in a mastermind, you need to join one. And if you can't join one, then create one. Get around other people that are doing what you want to do. It's very isolating to be doing this investor stuff on your own. About 5 years ago, I started a little mastermind in St. Louis with just St. Louis wholesalers. And we got together once a month. And we're competing against the same deals, right? But we still, every month, we'd get 5 to 10 other wholesalers together. And it was amazing. We did this for about 3 years. And I just stopped doing it because I was traveling too much and I got busy. But we would share what's working now. We would talk about, like, somebody would have a lead or a deal that they didn't have a buyer for. Somebody else there at that mastermind had a buyer for it. Somebody had a deal, they needed private money. This guy knew some lender. We collaborated, and you would think, oh, competition, that's not good. You get scared of that. The whole group elevated, and we would all do more deals together because we were working together. And that's what I love about masterminds like Investor Fuel, because you're going to learn what's working now today, because the market is shifting and the market is changing and the cheese is moving, and you need to know where it's going to go. So why not hang out with other people that are seeing the trends and seeing what's happening and where things are going, right?
Yeah. I think I was just talking about this with somebody else. I think there's really two things we offer a lot of things. And having been running Investor Fuel, actually coming up this fall is our 7-year anniversary, it's gone from kind of intangible, like I'm going to be around a bunch of people, to having a bunch of tangible benefits, like 100% financing through a couple of national lenders that only do this inside of our group. And we have some amazing benefits from Home Depot and some other people that like pay for the membership many times over for a lot of investors, actually. So some tangible stuff. But I think it comes down to really two big things. One is when you convince a lot of high level people to share their best knowledge, as somebody that does high ticket items like we do in real estate, it's like you could take one little nugget and it could be worth easily 6 figures a year for you just by learning this little thing. Like, I never thought about that. And a lot of times it's kind of obvious stuff. It's like, oh my God, it's right in my face. I just never thought about that before. And I'm going to start doing that. And then being around people that are like, not just tell you it. It's like, hey, let's sit together at lunch, or let's schedule a call for next week. And I'm going to give you my process map. I'm going to show you exactly how we do it,
Yeah.
And the second is, and this is probably one of the more powerful things, is getting around people that are already doing what you want to do. And it gives you the confidence that it's possible, because it's really easy for us to be back in our own market or working out of our house or whatever, and just questioning whether you're capable of even doing that. And when you start to surround yourself with people that are doing it at a high level, and when you realize, and not taking anything away from people in my mastermind or people that are influencers in the industry or all these people, is like, there aren't a lot of like people that we hang out with, Joe, that are like, that didn't go through a tough path to figure that out. Like, they worked hard. They're not like naturally just brilliant. Like, they just figured it out. Right. And so my point is like, if that guy can do it, I can do it too. And it's not people that are like, that guy's so smart. No, he's got a PhD and worked at NASA. It's like, no, these are just a bunch of people that just worked hard and figured it out. And therefore you can too,
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about the Investor Fuel OS. By the way, those of you listening on the audio podcast right now, the link, if you want more information on this event, is joemccall.com/fuel, joemccall.com/fuel. It'll take you there. You'll see all the speakers. Again, some big speakers are going to be there. It's going to be very educational. You're going to learn and network with a bunch of people. You don't have to be a member of the mastermind to come, but just come and hang out. You're just going to get a ton of value out of it. All right. joemccall.com/fuel. So let's talk about the Investor Fuel OS. And by the way, I Googled it, Investor Fuel OS, and there is a chat GPT. Have you seen this?
No.
For Investor Fuel OS?
No.
I don't know what it is, but it's like, it's from a guy named Dustin G. I won't say his last name, but it says there's buttons here to start at phase 1, explain the Investor Fuel OS. And it's a structured business development program designed to help companies clarify their foundations, assess their current situation, and set clear goals, execute a strategic plan to achieve those goals. It talks about foundations, understanding, evaluate, and launch. Oh my gosh, this is really cool.
Well, that's somebody that's not us though. It sounds like that's somebody that has something similar,
okay,
or similar name at least. But yeah, I think the operating system. So if you think, for those that are familiar with EOS,
Yes.
what we realize is it's just too generic of a system for real estate investors, and so we've created the Fuel OS, which kind of show you a little guide. This is our workbook guide. It's about 100 pages, called the Fuel OS here. And it's a business operating system for real estate investors. And essentially it's gives you guidelines on setting your KPIs, annual and quarterly goal planning, how to set up a typical meeting structure for your team so that it can operate with more structure than what the certainly average real estate investor business is used to, where they're just kind of flying by the seat of their pants and whatever happens. So you're tracking goals, setting goals out, as far as you want to. A lot of these systems are asking you for a 10-year plan. Like, a lot of us can't plan 10 days out. So I like to go like 2 to 3 years out of like high level. What do you want? The real meat is, what is your annual goal? And then backing into quarterly goals, and then down to a kind of a weekly, what needs to happen in order to hit the monthly goal, which needs to meet the quarterly goal, which needs to meet the annual goal. So it's essentially, it's also like some elements of the 12-week year, of where you just compress your goals into, when you plan out for a year, you're like, I want to do 50 deals this year. What happens is you're not on track for 11 months. And then all of a sudden you're like, I got a month to figure this out. And so it basically allows you to set goals and KPIs by day or by week, even, to say, this needs to happen every day or every week, or I'm off track from the beginning. And it allows you to essentially say, hey, if I'm off track in week 1 and week 2, like, let's start pulling levers and making stuff happen so we get back on track.
Well, the thing I love about the shorter time frame too is it allows you to start over quicker, right?
Yeah.
So if you mess up, you can start over again instead of waiting an entire year. You start over again in 3 months.
Right.
And your business, there's a lot of things you can't plan for and think about in the future that will happen to you. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
This manual you had, is there a way we can get that, Mike?
Well, Joe, you and I have talked about, we haven't shared it outside of our organization, but you and I have talked about maybe doing a version of this for your community sometime later in the year, like an annual planning session. So we probably need to talk a little bit more about that, but I'd love to find a way to do something with your community to help them kind of plan their year ahead. Because as they say, failing to plan is planning to fail, right?
Yes. And have you heard of the phrase piss? Is that it? No, PP. Sorry. Shoot. Oh, but the word piss is in it. It's a PPPP. Have you heard of this?
No.
Prior planning prevents piss poor performance.
Okay. All right.
The 6 P's. All right. Sorry about that. It's gross. But yeah, so that's good. I forgot about that. We need to talk about that. I want to put that inside my inner circle membership community there, because this is so important. Understanding just a simple framework. This isn't complicated. Like I have that book over there, Traction. I'm looking at it right now, and it just overwhelms me. I'm like, oh my gosh. And I read maybe 30 pages into it, and I put it down. I was like, I got too many things going on. Like this stresses me out. I'm not this guy that wants to figure that out. But I love what you're doing here, because you've simplified it. This is kind of like the abridged version for real estate investors, right?
Yeah. And it's very specific around a real estate investor business, from lead gen, marketing and lead gen, to sales and acquisitions, to dispo. Like it's very specific. Right. And I think, one of the things that a lot of people throw the word around COO, like other than, it's fairly common for a real estate investing business that even if they have 5 employees that they might hire a COO. And it's like, well, we kind of glorify the title sometimes in a really small business. But back to your early question, if you're just doing a deal or two a month, even, like, can you use a system like this? It's like, well, yeah, but you're probably going to have, back to that executive assistant, if you have an admin, like that's a detail oriented person, like let them help keep you organized. If you're like me and you're more of a visionary that's all over the place, it's like find somebody on your team or hire somebody on your team that is like even an admin or executive assistant can be essentially the implementer for this initially. And then as you grow, you might have a director of operations and maybe eventually a COO, right? But it just has to be that person that's detail oriented, that's going to track how the KPIs are performing every week, so that whether you're on track or off track. Because a lot of us, if left alone, we're like, yeah, we'll figure it out. Yeah, we'll get there. Oh, we still got plenty of time. I'm not going to pull together my numbers this week. I'm just too busy. And you need somebody that's like, nope, we're doing it like clockwork. We're going to follow the system.
Okay. So for somebody who doesn't have this manual yet, or, has no idea, I don't know when I'm going to be releasing it yet to my community. So give us something that we can take away and maybe actually implement today that comes out.
Let me, I'm shooting from the hip here, Joe, but I got a thought here. Let me pull up a portion of this that I want to talk about. I think it's essentially, well, see if I can find it here. Rating yourself kind of by function in your business, and starting to find where you're weak at. So, and really identifying, it's kind of being honest with yourself is as to how your business is performing. So I wasn't prepared for this, Jeff. So I'm like flipping through.
Take your time. This is
a needle in a haystack. But it's we have kind of an annual performance by department. Nobody's going to really be able to see this very well, but you just rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10 for sales or acquisitions. So how would you rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10? So for here, I have that your sales, this would be a 10. Your sales goals are clearly defined and your team is self-sufficient in executing the plan every day. You have the right sales team in place and have a plan for continuous sales training to keep your team operating at the peak of their abilities. So if you rated yourself a 10, you'd be in great shape. And if you rate yourself like a 4, or you don't even have a team, maybe you rate yourself how you ranked yourself against that. But by every department in your business, you kind of rank yourself on a scale of 1 to 10, and then you go figure out how to improve, right? And so, we might have things on here, like we have dispo and transaction coordination are things that you would rate yourself on. But if you're not doing enough deal volume, where you really need to put all your efforts into is sales and marketing activities to bring deals in the first place, right? Because if you could have amazing processes for how you what your TC process looks like, but if you don't have any deals coming in, it doesn't matter, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's doing an assessment of kind of every department in your business, if you will. And again, even if you're really small, all these departments exist. It's just that you're the manager of that department as well as the others. Um, and so that ultimately factors into goal planning. So what do I want to achieve in terms of, I mean, ultimately it has to have number signs on it, right? Like dollars, dollar signs on it, not just units, because you can't put units in the bank. So
Yeah.
what do you want to make in a year? You can back into if you, let's just hypothetically say that you wanted to make $240,000 a year in gross profit and your average gross profit is 20 grand. It's like, okay, well, you need to do, or let's just say it's 10 grand. You need to do 24 deals at 10 grand a pop, and that's 2 a month. And you just kind of essentially back into, well, how much marketing or how many leads do I need to be able to do 2 deals a month? And you just effectively back into it and wrap KPIs around it. It's like, okay, well, if I need to do 2 deals a month, how many leads do I need to get a month? How many do I need to get a week? How many do I need to get a day? So if you're like halfway through the week and you have no leads yet, then you have a plan to go start pulling levers or twisting knobs or doing whatever you have to do to get the phone ringing, because that's you're off track essentially. And then it's really just putting in place a series of meetings, of meeting types, that whether you have a weekly team meeting to go over your KPIs, a quarterly goal planning meeting and a review session, and annual planning, et cetera, to make sure that you've got the right structure in place to run your business effectively. Now, a lot of us have maybe no meetings, but we really have lots of it. They like the whole, you got a second meeting, or you're just answering Slack all day long, or whatever it is. And so, you might say, I don't want to be in meetings all day, but you're probably on call answering a bunch of questions anyway. And so what I've kind of found is by having a structure in place, you get rid of all those like, hey, you got a second meetings, because then what you say is like, no, I don't, but we have a meeting tomorrow, right? So let's just cover it there.
Okay, so this is a great point, because I'm listening to this thinking, man, I am the least structured guy in the world. I hate structure. It freaks me out. So, man, I don't want to install any systems in my business. I don't want to read this book called Traction and learn about the EOS. Like, it gives me the hives. So what do you do then? But because you got to, if you want to scale, you need these processes and systems in place.
Yeah.
What do you do?
Well, as the company owner, Joe, for somebody like you, like, again, you need to have an executive assistant or a director of operations, or somebody that's running the whole thing. Because that's one of the things that I realized is, as the owner of the business, I'm wearing a million hats. I got a lot of things going on. If I'm going to attend that meeting, and at some point, if the meeting can run well without you, you might not need it. It might be better that you're not there as the owner, right? If you're still doing 1 or 2 deals a month, and you're still going to be wearing a lot of hats for a little while. It's just the reality of it. But one of the things that I realized is you're tracking KPIs in your business, like metrics of what are going on. And if I have to do it personally, go pull numbers before a meeting for the meeting to happen, that's a problem. And so as the owner of the business, whether it's a virtual assistant or an executive assistant or some combination of those, you want your team to pull those numbers together where you can just show up to the meeting and be able to kind of give guidance and check on things. But if you're responsible for doing meeting prep, let's be honest, for a lot of us, it's just not going to happen because you're wearing a lot of hats.
One of the things that's helped me a little bit, and I'm not perfect at this, but I really try hard to do this, is I let my team know when we have these meetings, they have to be short, and I want you to bring me decisions that I have to make. Like what we try to start the meetings with, what are the 1 or 2 major decisions that we need to make today in this meeting? And that focuses it on, okay, what are the most important things? What are the most important decisions to make? And for me also, I have found that I'm better on these meetings when I'm on my phone walking around in my backyard. If I'm at a computer, I'm getting distracted. I'm thinking about 100 different things. But if I'm just listening to my team, and they know me well enough to know my attention span is pretty short. And so it helps them a lot, because they come to the table with, all right, we need these decisions today, Joe. And then they bring it to me. And that's so important of having a team and understanding your strengths and weaknesses, right?
Yeah. Even the meetings, though, they have structure. So we provide kind of an agenda of like the first 5 minutes you do this, then you've got 10 minutes to do that. And you need somebody managing the meeting that's a timekeeper. And what I've kind of realized is I just need to not talk, like, unless something
Yeah.
like, because I'll pontificate. The next thing you know, we're we're
Uh,
on the
oh, I'm
wrong
the
on the
same
wrong
way.
path.
Oh, it's horrible.
Yeah, yeah.
Let's
So
do this. I got a great idea. We should do this and this and this. It'll be easy. What are
right.
you guys worried about? Just
Yeah.
do this little thing here and let's do this new promotion. Let's do this new marketing campaign.
Yep. Yep.
Okay. So I want to talk about one more thing real quick here and we'll wrap it up. Let's talk about managing cash flow and understanding your numbers. This is a big thing I see a lot of people struggling with, right? As they start growing their business, sometimes they get a bit ahead of themselves and they build this huge team and they don't have the revenue coming in. And it's not until the end of the year when they look at back and they say, oh my gosh, we made $500,000 this year and I'm broke as a joke.
Yeah.
Or I didn't plan for taxes, or
Yeah.
everyone got paid but me. How do you avoid as you're growing your business? I know one guy who said he wants to write a book and he wants to title the book, um, Should I Scale My Business or Slit My Wrists? That's not funny, actually. Sorry. So how do you avoid that? Like, how do you manage the numbers so you're growing and scaling smartly? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think we, like, my wife is essentially, we have a CFO now, through our buddy Tim, by the way. So
Oh, really?
but they've taken
Cool.
over for my wife, who
Oh,
has been
good
our
for you.
CFO for all these years. And I would say I'm a big fan of the profit first type model.
Yeah.
We don't follow that exactly. We use a variant of that. But I think, probably from our corporate background, like some of the things that we learned too is, so my wife used to be a bankruptcy and turnaround consultant for businesses. And it
Wow.
always was, it was very little. And it was one of the largest companies in the country that do this.
I'm learning so much about you on this interview, Mike. No
We've
wonder
known each
you're
other
doing
for a
so
long
well.
time.
It's
Yeah.
your wife. It's not
Yeah, it's not
you.
me. I'm not even the pretty face. I'm the puppet, No, but she worked for a company that they say they were bankruptcy and turnaround consultant, but really it was a liquidation company. There weren't a whole lot of turnarounds. There were mostly liquidations, but it was always
Wow.
through poor
Okay.
cash management. So I think
Yeah.
she's
Yeah.
instilled stuff in us, and we're both fairly conservative in nature. So, if you're listening to this and you're not in a place to do this, like, you just aspire to get to this point, but you should have, you don't want to commingle in the real estate investing business. You don't want to commingle. There's I would recommend having 3 bank accounts at a minimum,
Okay.
or follow profit first. You've got
Yeah.
your business operations account, which is paying for your staff, marketing, all those things. You have a property account. If you're assigning, it's not as important, but if you're rehabbing, you want to keep, you don't want to be deciding between, should I market or should I finish this rehab? Like, that needs to be in a separate account, especially if
Yeah.
you're borrowing money, God forbid, like that. You don't
Yeah.
want to commingle
Yeah.
property activities with
Oh,
operating
yeah.
funds.
No, don't do that.
And then the third is a reserve account. And so the reserve, you just don't touch until you have overcome, depends on the business a little bit, especially if you're rehabbing a lot, you might be a little more intensive, like your profit cycle times are much longer, but you generally want to have, 3 to 4 months of operating capital that's just sitting there, so that if you have a bad month, all of a sudden you don't have to say, hey, we can't advertise this month because we had a bad month last month. And then next thing you know, you're going to have more bad months because you're not putting new leads in the pipeline. And so that reserve only is tapped 2 times. Once if you're running low and you need to kind of fund the business, or second, if you have more than 3 or 4 months and you want to take a distribution off the table. So some of it is just keeping it that organized and keeping money in different pockets, so that you're not commingling everything and forcing yourself into making bad decisions. And
Man,
back to that
that's
person that's
really good.
doing a deal or 2 a month, like, don't go do one big juicy deal and decide to, go get a gold tooth or something. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
keep it. The truth is if you're at 1 or 2 deals a month even, and you want to grow to 3, 4, 5 deals a month, like, you should still live like you're poor. Like, put that money back into your business to grow it up to the level that can then allow you to live the lifestyle that you want to
Yeah.
live. But
Well,
don't make that decision too early.
it starts with knowing your numbers.
Yeah,
I was in
for
a
sure.
mastermind before you started yours, and you might have been in this meeting, but this gentleman said he came from a corporate background. We're all these mavericks, just we're doing a bunch of deals. Yeah, this is awesome. And He's like, none of you guys know your numbers. Like, I've asked you in private in these meetings, like, show me your numbers. And you're like, oh, it's out there somewhere. I just kind of, you know it in your head. And he came down on all of us. And I remember this so vividly because I was like, oh my gosh. He said, if you don't know your numbers, you don't have a real business. Stop playing games.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I don't know my numbers. I mean, I'll have to sit down and pull them together and it'll take me a couple hours, but like that. And I remember you could have heard a pin drop, and these were all what we would thought were active. I mean, like really, really good investors that, wholesaling a lot of deals. They had a lot of doors, but we didn't know our numbers. At least most of us didn't. Right.
Yeah.
And that is so important. You've got to know your numbers.
Yeah, absolutely.
True. All right, good. Mike, I'm looking forward to diving deeper into the the Fuel OS. And I'm sorry for bringing up whoever this dingling was who.
Yeah. Oh, you're reading it. I was like, I don't know that guy. That sounds familiar.
Sorry about that. So don't go there. Don't go look at that. I have no idea what that's all about.
We honestly, we don't have anything public facing unless something's leaked out, right now. Okay. It's more of an internal for our members and maybe you and I will do something together here too, Joe.
Yeah, let's talk about that. I'm excited about that. And I'm excited about your big event coming up. This is an annual conference that you do in Dallas, October 7th and 9th. JoeMcCall.com/fuel. Right now, the tickets are discounted. JoeMcCall.com/fuel. Pace Morby's going to be there. Tom Kroll's going to be there. Mike, of course, will be there. A bunch of really big active investors will be there. I'll be there speaking. And I was joking before, I have 6 hours. I don't. I probably just have 30 to 45 minutes, but I'm going to be sharing some of my best stuff on like more of a high level operational thing, not deal specific on how to do deals, because everybody there is doing deals, but this is going to be more higher level, like how to think and bigger and how to scale without going crazy.
You know what's funny about this event is we've got some, obviously, the names you just mentioned, Tom Kroll, Pace, guys like that everybody knows, which is cool to pull people in. And I've had some pride over the years of like at the last event, I had 2 people that are in my mastermind that had never spoken before, that were nervous as hell to get on stage. One of them had done over 2,500 wholesale deals, and one of them had done over 5,000 fix and flips in California. I was like, dude, you guys are like, the rock stars of rock stars. And like, well, what am I supposed to talk about? They're like nervous about it, So we pride ourselves on having, it's not, there might be some people that you don't know that are speaking there, but I can promise you they've been vetted out and they're all like amazing operators and they have great knowledge to share. And
that's why when you offered to have me come and speak, or when you offered that to me, I without hesitation said yes.
Yeah.
Because I just want to go there and listen to these guys.
Yeah. There's a lot of great knowledge.
Because some of these investors that you would never heard of, they don't have YouTube channels, Instagram things. Yeah. They don't do podcasts. And they're like, these guys are killing it. They just don't like talking about it, but they're going to be there sharing what they do. And they don't have a program to sell. It's going to be really good.
No, not at all. Yeah. Yep.
Awesome. JoeMcCall.com/fuel. Go check it out. Thank you, Mike. Any parting words, final things you want to say here?
No, I appreciate the opportunity. I think, I guess one little thing I'll share here is it's interesting depending on where people are in their business. I realize this is a relatively difficult time in our economy, right?
Yeah.
But I think you and I have been around long enough to we know where there's people that are crushing it right now, and a lot of what differentiates those that are crushing it from those that aren't is just what happens between your ears up here, right? Yeah. There's a lot of mindset stuff, and so I just saw this video this morning. It was a teacher. It was a experiment. She handed out. It was I can't think of what you call it, where you get a word and you can rejumble it into an anagram. I think you rejumble it into something else. And she did this thing where there were like 4 rows. I don't know, let's just say 4 rows of like 6 people. So they're 12 and 12. And they handed out, and I didn't even know what was going on when I first watched it, but on the right side of the room, they gave 3 words as an anagram, and they said unscramble them. Go to the first one, now go to the second one, now go to the third one. And on the other side of the room, same thing. And then at the end, she asked, okay, well, who's done with the first 3 words? And the right side of the room, like pretty much all raised their hand, and the left side, like none of them raised their hand, or one person did. And then they did a second round, and the right side of the room's all done really fast, and the left side of the room. And then on the third one, a couple more on the left side raised their hand, but there was a phrase that she called it, but essentially they gave the left side of the room way harder words, and they didn't tell anybody that. And on the third one, they gave everybody the same words, but not nearly as many people on the left side completed it. And the point is they knew that they were behind. Like, you start to get this bias towards, I can't do this, I'm not smart enough for this or whatever. And this whole thing happened in like 3 minutes, and it was this bias that you gave yourself of like, I'm not good at this, or I'm not smart enough for this or whatever. But they were different words, and they didn't know that till the end. And on the third one, they were all the same words, but they had given up from the first 2 rounds. They started to feel like they couldn't compete or they weren't worthy. And it was an interesting exercise in telling you, like, we're all worthy of this. You just have to be willing to put in the work and not give up so quickly, essentially. So
I love that.
I think that it's an interesting time in our, and I see it with across my businesses, because I support hundreds of professional real estate investors, of some people that are struggling right now and some that are having their best year or best quarter ever. And I know a lot of it is mindset type stuff. Right. And so one more reason to get around a lot of people, because we all lift each other up.
Do you have a link to that video? You can text me later.
Let me see if I can find, I don't know. I think I saved it. It was like a Facebook story, and I think I saved it. If I did, I'll text you a link.
I will. I'll put it in the YouTube description or comments on my YouTube channel. But yeah, that's cool.
Yeah,
cool.
Awesome.
There's a lot of good texts that have been coming in here on the YouTubes too. And I'm sorry I've not been putting them up, but this has been great content. Thank you, Salem and Michael and Jim and John. Appreciate you guys giving me some feedback here. All right, Mike, thank you so much. Appreciate you. And we'll see you guys later. Go to joemccall.com/fuel, and I'll see you guys at this conference, October 7th and 9th. Bye-bye.
Take care.